Privet, Katila, ya niharsho. Because today I wanted to argue about a concept. I know, it sounds boring, but I think it is interesting to look and examine our deepest philosophies and assumptions. Because at the end of the day, politics is just the manifestation of philosophy. So, one underlying philosophy that I embrace that undermines a lot of my ideology is called, or what I like to call, the right of self-determination. And in this video, I want to explain, well, first, what that means. That might be a bit important, at least to me, and why I feel it is important. Before I start, I need to explain why we need to know our foundation for our ideas. We need to know, what we fight for, because if we can't convince people on the same moral principles and ideals, then all we'll be doing is just talking past each other. An example for this is I always use this phrase for examples. I think everyone knows this phrase. Taxation is theft, right? Which is something you hear a lot from libertarians, and the idea being that the government taking money from you is unjust because they're not asking you for it, and thus it is theft or stealing. This is a principle or an assumption that libertarian philosophy is built upon, or at least one of the pillars. So let's say that even if all the facts show that having a single-payer universal healthcare system, for example, might, by the evidence, lead to a better health outcomes and a better society, it does not matter. Because morally, people oppose the government using taxes to pay for other people's stuff without the consent of others. But if someone does not buy into this taxation is theft pillar or moral argument, then it just seems silly. Like, why would you oppose, say, the government giving poor people food? The reason it's such a fierce debate and it never gets answered or solved, and it probably never will, is because of a difference in the underlying philosophy. So the point of politics is always trying to get people to see the right underlying philosophies and politics, or not politics, philosophy and morality. So for the record, by the way, I oppose the taxation is theft argument. I'm just using it as an example, but maybe I'll make a video on why taxation is not theft. Anyway, the purpose of this video is to lay out a case for the idea of the right of self-determination, and for the people who might not agree with our end goals, and at least an explanation on the reasoning behind our actions. The definition of self-determination, at least what I use when I say the term, is the right of a group of people in the form of nation states to be able to freely express their own self-identity and sovereignty over their own affairs. Basically, think of it like this. The people of Japan are unique in their own right. Different ethnically, culturally, religiously, linguistically, etc., etc. They have their own way of running their society, and Japan, as a nation-state, is the physical representation of that group of people, which are fundamentally unique and different from every other group of people. Japan is the land of the Japanese. This means Japan, as a nation, serves the interests and acts as a manifestation of this group of people to express their self-identity and preserve it and to stand out among everyone else in this world. As a question that I posit to you is, without our identity, without a sense of unity and community, what are we but just mere animals going day to day trying to find food and find a mate? Identity is an intrinsic human need, and the human race more broadly is made up with a beautiful canvas of a diversity. And hey, I'm being unironic here. There is so much difference within the human race, and I just find that absolutely fucking stunning. And what the right of self-determination says is that the countless groups of people that make up the human race have an identity, that they are unique, and that they have a right to preserve themselves and have a special place for themselves on this earth for them and their posterity. We're not one-man islands. We're human beings. We have groups that we feel attached to, and we are part of we're part of an identity. Because if it's just us, we're just going day to day, we're just toiling, trying to fuck and eat and do whatever. But identity is something intrinsic, something that makes life worth living. And what this says is that we have the right to preserve it. Everyone does, not just us. So, we can bring out the statistics that more homogeneous societies run better, have more national cohesion, that there is less tension, and that diversity and multiculturalism and trying to mix everyone together in the same spot it leads to conflict and competition and violence. We can bring out the facts, but I won't here. The reason being is that this value, this moral principle of self-determination, is true no matter the facts. Even if the facts were not on our side, we still believe that, for example, say, the Turks have a nation of their own, and that having Turkey become non-Turkish would be an absolute disaster, even if the economy gets better. So even if the facts show that, we should sacrifice Turkey being a homeland for the Turks because it might increase the GDP, well, maybe that might be true, but we have a moral stance saying, no, Turkey belongs to the Turks. Damn the economy if that's what needs to be done. We might have to sacrifice some GDP growth. In this liberal international order that we live in this modern day, in a way we already acknowledge this, this fundamental right. When groups try to invade, conquer, and settle other lands, and displacing the natives, this is seen as a human rights violation. And when we get browbeaten for our history, the number one thing, you could think about, why do they chastise our history? Well, they chastise us for mass settling in what used to be Native American lands, for taking over the political administration in Africa, in African lands, for trying to force natives around the world to speak and act like us. Another thing is when they bring up the Nazis, and when the Nazis were put up on war crime trials, one of the big crimes was trying to turn Poland into a German state through mass German migration, because they wanted, for Lebensraum, they wanted to go all of East Europe, but Poland specifically, they were going to try to displace all the Polish and turn German. And when a group tries to destroy this identity of another group, it is seen as a crime, as it should be. Because even if that land where Poland used to be was inhabited by Germans and where they spoke German and acted German, it wouldn't be Polish anymore. It would just simply be an extension of Germany, which was seen as a crime. All we ask for in the distant right is that the peoples of European descent have this exact same right. As we believe that, for example, Denmark is different and should remain Danish, that Hungary is different and belongs to the Hungarians. And we believe this for all people, from Japan to France to Egypt to Mongolia. This has nothing to do with hate or violence. We can still appreciate other people and their way of life and the way they express themselves. All this principle asks for is that people have a right to a homeland, to express their identity, and what we advocate for is that this right is extended to the peoples of Europe and their descendants in other continents. Yep, that's it. Not that crazy, huh? Let me take an example. You might yourself be someone who actually already believes strongly in this principle, even if you yourself are left-wing. So I believe most of you have heard of a place called Palestine. Pretty important place, lots of history, heritage, and a hotspot rife for independence. I'm not going to go into the details of Israel versus Palestine. That's not what this video is about, except I'm going to be alt-centrist here and say that both of them deserve a right to their own state, where they can run their own affairs and express their identity. Most left-wing people fight fiercely for the rights of Palestinians. And they fight for them to not be subjected to the yoke of, say, Israeli encroachment. And, all they ask for is, all we're asking for is that we want a state specifically for Palestinians. Palestinians are a unique ethnic group. They are separate from the Jewish people. They have their own identity, and they want their own state. And many left-wing people back their claim to that, which is perfectly fine. I do as well. Another example is Kurdistan, where the Kurds want their own state that is separate from the Arabs and the Turks. But one thing you have to, but what they are supporting is a ethnic-based state of Kurdistan, which is a land for the Kurds. Not everyone is Kurdish. It's something specific. My white ass ain't Chinese, even if I get Chinese citizenship, for example. So a lot of left-wing people support Kurdistan and Palestine without realizing the underlying tones that they're actually supporting an ethnic-based, an identity of those countries. So, what this principle says is that we're not asking for much from it. It's like, why, for example, why is it seen as the most obvious thing in the world in the United States Congress that, despite bickering over everything, the smallest of things, the biggest thing that everyone agrees on is that, for example, Israel must be defended at all costs and given billions in aid, and, it is just self-evident that the Jewish people have a right to their own homeland, which I agree with. In fact, I actually might be a Zionist in that respect. I'm a Zionist. But, it's considered hateful and racist for us to suggest that the Dutch have a right to that as well. What we're asking for is that the Netherlands shouldn't, you don't have to give them billions of dollars in aid. They don't need full American military protection. All this asks for is that the Netherlands be, Dutch. And that's it. Not that scary now, is it? Now they understand that it's just a normal thing. It's just normal. So this principle of self-determination realizes that human beings are different, and that the human race has so much beauty in it, spanning the globe, and that we want to preserve these large differences with their own countries. That's all this principle does, is realizing that we are different, that the human race has many groups of people who want to preserve their heritage, and that realizing this very human feeling of identity and self-preservation, we advocate for the rights of people in their states to preserve their heritage and their culture and their identity in all its forms. And so, for example, Denmark remains a land of the Danes, a specific ethnic group. There's only a few million of them, but they are specific. And they live in their part of the world where they can be Danish. Not anyone else can. People can visit, people can study, hell, they can even work there for a little bit. And the Danish can appreciate the cultures of other people. But Denmark shall, from today, from the past, and to far beyond our years, be a place for the Danes. And that's just an example. This applies to anyone, any other country, Israel, China, Iran, you name it. So thanks for watching. I hope I explained why we believe what we believe, at least the moral principle of it. Of our advocacy, and why you should believe in it, and why you should, probably embrace it, regardless of your politics. Regardless of it, you should believe in the right of self-determination. You can be a socialist, a monarchist, a libertarian, a social democrat, a conservative, a techno-futurist, autocratic social revolutionary, or whatever. But I hope you understand this value and embrace it. So thanks again. I hope you like this video. Give it a thumbs up and share it. And comment if you so wish. And, if you really loved it, check out my Patreon to help me out. So aim high, wander on, from America, with Russian love.